So this is the last anemia that we're going to go over. There's a lot of different types of anemia, so please make sure you do a little bit more reading so you can have an idea of what to look for. All of these anemias have a lot of similar symptoms, but the reason behind it may be different. Some of these are genetic, some of them are hemolytic, some are aplastic, so just make sure you have an understanding of the pathophysiology, and then you'll be able to add on different anemias because of that. So the glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency anemia, it's a mouthful. It's usually just called G6PD anemia. This is genetic. It's a deficiency of an enzyme called G6PD, which protects red blood cells from becoming damaged too early. So if somebody's lacking in this, then they're going to have breakdown of red blood cells before they needed to. A premature breakdown of red blood cells. So this can become very dangerous. This is a type of hemolytic anemia. It's called an inherited hemolytic anemia. So a risk factor would be being of African descent. So 10 to 14% of males, specifically males, in the U.S. have that gene. So it is fairly common. You may see it. Some clinical manifestations will be your classic symptoms of anemia, which is the pallor, the fatigue, the shortness of breath, and the tachycardia. Then there's some other symptoms that are specific to this one, like the jaundice, and that's going to be because of that increased destruction of red blood cells, increases the bilirubin. So you can see in that jaundice. You may see dark urine because the kidneys are trying to deal with all of these old damaged red blood cells. And then an enlarged spleen, because when red blood cells become damaged and die, they go to the spleen for processing. Your spleen kind of holds on to all that. So it's going to become enlarged if there's an excess number of damaged and dead red blood cells. So we're going to diagnose this with the CBC. H&H is going to be decreased. The reticulocyte count is going to be increased. Reticulocyte measures the immature red blood cells. So because all of these red blood cells are being damaged constantly, this person's body is just constantly making new red blood cells, so they're going to be pretty immature, released before they're ready. You can also do a smear for Heinz bodies. These are clumps of destroyed hemoglobin that attach to the red blood cells. That's not something we would typically see in a healthy individual. And of course, we can also do DNA testing because this is genetic. So with this disorder, there are some things that are going to kind of trigger an event, trigger a hemolytic event where this is happening more frequently. Something that can trigger that is some foods. So fava beans, for example. That's something they're going to need to avoid, so I'm going to do a lot of dietary teaching on what to avoid. They may need blood transfusions, probably several times within their lifetime. Something else that can trigger an event would be some medications like aspirin or NSAIDs. They may need folic acid supplements, and they may need, if the spleen becomes too enlarged or inflamed, they may need a splenectomy. And then, of course, oxygen if they're, especially if they're in a hemolytic event like that. So complications would be a severe anemia. If they do have a trigger and that triggers a hemolytic event, all the cells start splitting open, they're going to become severely anemic. The kidney and spleen can suffer a lot of damage from this. Kidneys are very sensitive organs, so we may need to eventually look at the kidney damage and spleen damage, and they may end up with this splenectomy, like I said. And then all of that red blood cell destruction can activate something called the coagulation cascade. So that's a series of enzymatic reactions that leads to clotting. So not only are we going to have to deal with a severe anemia and hemolysis, but there's also going to be clotting throughout the body. And of course, that can lead to other things like PE, DVT, CVA, MI, so we need to be very careful with that. So please make sure you do your readings and come to class prepared for some activities, and yeah, I'll see you there.